The first time Eli asked me who I was, I had just pulled him out of a ditch. "Sir?" he said, blood running down his face from a gash above his eyebrow, confusion clouding his remarkable blue eyes. "Do I know you?" That was 3 months ago, on a bitter November evening, when the first snow of the season had made the winding rural roads treacherous. I'd been bringing in more firewood when I heard the crash, the sickening crunch of metal meeting the ancient oak at the edge of my property, followed by the slide of tires as the vehicle careened into the drainage ditch. I'd called 911 while running toward the wreckage, my old knees protesting every step. The car was a compact sedan, its front end accordioned against my property line, and there, slumped over the steering wheel, was a young man I'd never seen before. Today marks the 94th time Eli has asked who I am. 94 mornings of the same confused awakening, the same careful explanation, the same cautious building of trust. You might think it would get easier with repetition, but each time I see recognition fade from his eyes, replaced by that initial wariness, something in my chest constricts. "Good morning," I say, setting down the tray containing his breakfast, oatmeal with brown sugar and sliced bananas, the way he's preferred it for the past 63 mornings. "I'm Howard Mercer. You're in my home in Stratford, Vermont." He blinks, taking in the guest room that has been his for these 3 months, the pine furniture, the blue and white quilt, the stack of books on the nightstand that he reads each day and forgets by morning. His voice is always rough in the mornings, uncertain. "I don't remember coming here." "I know." I ease myself into the chair beside his bed, my joints stiff from the cold that seeps through the old farmhouse despite the constantly burning wood stove. "You were in an accident in November. A car crash near my property. You suffered a head injury that affected your memory." His hands, young, strong, with long fingers that I've learned belonged to a pianist, moved to the scar along his hairline, now a pale pink line instead of the angry red gash it had been. "The doctor calls it anterograde amnesia," I continue, the explanation as familiar to me now as my own reflection. "You have difficulty forming new memories. Each day." I hesitate, though I've said these words 93 times before. "Each day starts fresh for you." "Like that movie," he says suddenly. 50 First Dates. Drew Barrymore, right? I nod, unable to contain a small smile. This is new. Usually it takes longer for him to make the connection. Similar, yes, though the doctors say your condition is likely temporary. You've been showing improvement. He absorbs this information, his face cycling through the emotions I've come to recognize: confusion, fear, embarrassment, and finally a tentative acceptance. The progression is quicker now than it was in the beginning. "And you're taking care of me? Are we related?" This question, too, is part of our daily ritual. "No, we're not related. I was the first person on the scene after your accident. The hospital couldn't locate any family, and you needed somewhere to recover while they searched. I volunteered." I don't tell him that volunteered is a generous description of what actually happened. That his social worker, desperate and overwhelmed by a system with too few resources, had practically begged me to take him in temporarily. That I had resisted, insisting I was too old, too set in my ways, too ill-equipped to care for a young man with such complex needs. "You couldn't remember your address," I continue, "though you knew your name, Eli Donovan, and that you'd recently moved to Vermont from Chicago. Your wallet was destroyed in the crash, and your phone was password protected. This is the sanitized version. I don't mention the weeks of frustrated calls to disconnected numbers, the search for relatives that yielded nothing but dead ends, the growing suspicion that Eli might have been running from something or someone when he crashed on that snowy night. I'm sorry to be such a burden," he says, another constant in our daily exchange. His innate politeness seems to transcend his memory loss. "You're not a burden," I reply, meaning it more today than I did 93 days ago. "Now eat your breakfast while it's warm. I'll get your journal." The journal was Dr. Winter's idea, a blue leather-bound book where Eli records the events of each day, his feelings, any flickers of memory that might surface. Each morning after our initial reintroduction, he reads the previous entries, studying his own handwriting like an archaeologist examining artifacts from a lost civilization. I return with the journal and my own cup of coffee, giving him privacy as he reads. Through the window, I watch chickadees and nuthatches flit around the bird feeder. February in Vermont means short days and bone-deep cold, but there's a pristine beauty to the snow-covered landscape that still moves me even after 30 years in this house. We play chess, Eli said suddenly, looking up from the journal. Apparently, I beat you yesterday. I turned back to him with a smile. You did. For the third time this week, I might add, though you'd have no reason to remember your winning streak. A ghost of a smile crosses his face. I was a chess champion in high school. At least according to myself. He gestures to the journal with a mixture of wonder and discomfort, as though he can't quite reconcile that the handwriting belongs to him. You play brilliantly, I confirm. Your strategies are quite innovative. And we listen to music in the evenings? Classical mostly, but sometimes jazz? I nod. You were a piano performance major at Northwestern. You seem to have retained all your musical knowledge and abilities, even if the personal memories are inconsistent. This, too, is carefully phrased. The truth is more complicated. Eli's procedural memory, how to play piano, how to play chess, how to read and write, remains intact. His semantic memory, facts about the world, historical events, general knowledge, is mostly preserved. It's his episodic memory, personal experiences, daily events that gets wiped clean each night as he sleeps. Except it isn't quite that simple anymore. Over the past few weeks, there have been moments when something lingers, a preference for oatmeal over eggs, recognizing a piece of music we listened to days earlier, remembering which chair he prefers in the living room. Small things, but each one a victory that Dr. Winters records with cautious optimism during our weekly visits to her office. Your name is Howard, Eli says, testing the word. Howard Mercer? And you're a retired professor of literature. Yes. Again, that small spark of hope ignites in my chest. Usually it takes him much longer to absorb these details. You've been alone since your partner died 3 years ago. His name was Daniel. Eli looks up from the journal, his expression apologetic. I'm sorry. That seems like a painful thing to have to tell a stranger every morning. The observation catches me off guard. Most days, Eli is too preoccupied with his own situation to notice the emotional toll our daily reset takes on me. It is, I admit, seeing no reason to lie, but less painful than it once was. He studies me with those remarkably perceptive eyes. At 24, he has the kind of youthful beauty that makes my old heart ache with a mixture of appreciation and loss. Dark hair that falls across his forehead, strong features softened by a certain vulnerability, and those eyes that seem to see more than his condition should allow. You're kind to do this, he says finally, to take in someone you don't know. If only he understood the irony of his statement. After 94 days, I know Eli better than I've known almost anyone except Daniel. I know that he hums Chopin when he's content and Rachmaninoff when he's anxious. I know that he takes his coffee with too much sugar and can't stand the smell of bananas unless they're in oatmeal. I know that he gets a small crease between his eyebrows when he's concentrating on a chess move, and that he laughs with his whole body when something genuinely amuses him. But each day, I am a stranger to him. It's nearly 10, I say, changing the subject. Doctor, Winters will be here at 11 for your weekly assessment. Would you like to shower first, or should we review more of your journal? Our days have a necessary structure: breakfast, journal review, medical appointments or cognitive exercises, lunch, an afternoon activity, usually chess or a walk when weather permits, dinner, music or reading in the evening, then bed by 10, when Eli takes the medication that Dr. Lee Winters hopes will eventually help his brain repair the damaged neural pathways. Shower, I think, he decides, closing the journal. Though it's strange to rely on this to know my own routine. There are clean towels in the bathroom, I tell him, gathering the breakfast tray. Call if you need anything. I leave him to his privacy, using the time to tidy the already tidy kitchen and prepare for Dr. Winter's visit. The rituals of domestic life have become a comfort these past months, a sharp contrast to the empty days that stretched before me after Daniel's death, when I would sometimes go an entire week without speaking to another human being. Before Eli, I had been slowly disappearing into the isolation of my grief, becoming as much a ghost as the memory of my partner that haunts these rooms. Now I have purpose again, even if that purpose renews itself with painful repetition each morning. Dr. Winters arrives precisely at 11, as she does every Wednesday, bringing with her the brisk efficiency and genuine compassion that made me trust her immediately when we first met in the hospital on the night of Eli's accident. "Good morning, Howard," she greets me, stamping snow from her boots in the mudroom. "How's our patient today?" "Better, I think," I reply, taking her coat. He made the chest connection more quickly, remembered details from the journal with less confusion. She nods, professional interest lighting her eyes. "Any spontaneous recollection? Anything from previous days that wasn't prompted by the journal?" I hesitate. He knew which chair was his in the living room without being told. And last night he asked for that Mozart piece we listened to on Sunday, the Piano Concerto No. 23. But he didn't remember listening to it, just that we had. "Promising," she says, pulling out her tablet to make notes. "The neuroplasticity exercises seem to be helping. Where is he now?" "Getting dressed after his shower. He'll be down in a moment." We move to the living room, where the wood stove radiates welcome heat against the February chill. Through the windows snow has begun to fall again, fat flakes drifting lazily from a pearl-gray sky. "And how are you holding up?" Dr. Winters asks, her tone softening as she sets aside her tablet. "This arrangement was only supposed to be temporary, but it's been 3 months now." I look away, unwilling to let her read too much in my expression. "I'm fine. It's good to have the company." "Howard," she says gently, "Eli's condition is improving. Slowly, yes, but there are definite signs of progress. We need to discuss what happens when if he recovers more significant memory function. The question I've been avoiding. If Eli recovers, he will no longer need me. He will return to whatever life he was building before the accident, and I will return to my solitude. The thought sends a cold spike of dread through me that has nothing to do with the Vermont winter. Of course I manage, but I'm saved from further discussion by the sound of Eli's footsteps on the stairs. "Good morning, Dr. Winters," he says as he enters, his hair still damp from the shower. "Howard told me to expect you, though I don't remember meeting you before." She smiles warmly. "That's perfectly all right, Eli. Let's sit down and go through today's assessment, shall we?" I excuse myself to make tea, giving them privacy for the cognitive tests and neurological exercises that have become part of our weekly routine. In the kitchen, I move mechanically through the familiar tasks, heating water, selecting tea, chamomile for Dr. Winters, Earl Grey for Eli, English breakfast for myself, arranging cookies on a plate. My hands shake slightly as I set everything on a tray. Dr. Winters' question has unsettled me more than I'd like to admit. What will happen if Eli recovers? What will happen if he doesn't? Both possibilities fill me with a complicated mix of hope and dread. When I return to the living room, Dr. Winters is showing Eli a series of images on her tablet, asking him to identify and later recall them. It's a test they do every week, though Eli never remembers having done it before. "Tea," I announce, setting the tray on the coffee table. "And some of Mrs. Abernathy's shortbread cookies. She brought them over yesterday, as thanks for shoveling her walkway." "Mrs. Abernathy," Eli repeats, looking up from the tablet. "Your neighbor with the calico cat named Chairman Meow." Dr. Winters and I exchange a quick glance. This information isn't in today's journal entry. It's a detail from several days ago. "That's right," I say carefully, trying to keep the excitement from my voice. "You met her last week when she came to drop off some books she thought you might enjoy." Eli frowns, concentrating. "I don't remember meeting her, but I remember the cat's name. It made me laugh. because it's so clever. Excellent, Dr. Winters says, making a note. That's exactly the kind of connection we're hoping to see more of. Your brain is starting to form bridges across the gap in your episodic memory. The assessment continues for another hour, with Dr. Winters testing various cognitive functions and memory pathways. By the end, Eli seems tired but less frustrated than in previous sessions. You're making progress, she tells him as she packs up her materials. The medication seems to be helping, and Howard's structured approach to your daily routine provides the consistency your brain needs right now. Eli glances at me, a fleeting look of gratitude that warms me despite the snow now falling heavily outside. I'm lucky he found me, then. Indeed you are, Dr. Winters agrees. Howard has been instrumental in your recovery process. She turns to me. Could I have a word before I leave? We step into the kitchen, leaving Eli leafing through one of the art books Mrs. Abernathy lent him, the kind with large, vivid reproductions of famous paintings that seem to soothe him even when he doesn't remember having seen them before. His progress is encouraging, Dr. Winters says, keeping her voice low. But I want to manage expectations, yours and his. Recovery from this type of amnesia isn't linear. He might have days of significant breakthrough followed by regression. I understand, I reply, though part of me wants to cling to today's small victory. He remembered Chairman Meow, after all. And Howard, she continues, her expression softening, I meant what I said earlier. We need to discuss long-term plans. If Eli continues to improve, he may eventually want to resume his independent life. And if he doesn't, he can stay as long as he needs to, I interrupt, more forcefully than intended. This house has plenty of room, and I'm not bothered by the daily repetition. Dr. Winter studies me with the penetrating gaze that has likely served her well in her psychiatric practice. It's not just about the practical arrangements. I'm concerned about the emotional dynamics here. Eli is vulnerable, and I'm well aware of the ethical considerations, I cut in, my tone sharper than she deserves. I was a professor for 40 years. I understand the power imbalance inherent in caregiving relationships. That's not what I meant, she says gently. I'm concerned about you, Howard. About what happens to you either way this goes. This simple kindness in her voice nearly undoes me. I look away, focusing on the snow building up on the windowsill outside. I'm 68 years old, I say finally. I've loved and lost before. I'll manage, whatever happens. She doesn't look convinced, but she nods. Just remember that you need support too. My door is always open, not just for Eli. After she leaves, I find Eli still absorbed in the art book, studying a Monet with the intense concentration he brings to everything new, which in his case is nearly everything. I like the way the light breaks on the water, he says without looking up. Like it's being shattered and reformed all at once. It's called impression, sunrise, I tell him, settling into my usual chair. It gave the Impressionist movement its name. He nods, still focused on the image. I know about Impressionism. It's strange what stays and what goes. He looks up then, his gaze direct. Doctor, Winters says I'm getting better. That I might remember more soon. Yes, I agree, unsure what else to say. But I'm not sure what I'm going back to, he continues, a shadow crossing his face. The journal entries from the beginning, they're so confused, so frightened. And there's nothing about my life before the accident because I couldn't remember enough to write it down. This is the heart of the mystery that has haunted us these past months. Who was Eli Donovan before he crashed on my property? The police found no outstanding warrants, no missing persons report matching his description. His social media accounts had been deactivated months before the accident. The address on his now-expired driver's license led to an apartment building in Chicago where no one remembered him clearly. It was as if he had been deliberately erasing himself even before the accident wiped his memory clean. Whatever you were running from, I say carefully, you're safe here until you're ready to face it again. His head snaps up, surprise evident in his expression. Running from? Why do you think I was running? I hesitate, regretting my choice of words. Just an impression. The lack of connections, the move from Chicago, the fact that no one has been searching for you. It suggested you might have been starting fresh for some reason. He's quiet for a long moment, staring down at the Monet without really seeing it. That makes sense, he says finally, though I wish I knew what I was afraid of. The vulnerability in his voice stirs something protective in me. Whatever it was, it can't find you here. He smiles then, a genuine smile that transforms his face. No, I suppose not. Not with Howard Mercer standing guard. The comment is clearly meant to be lighthearted, but it touches something deep within me. For 3 years after Daniel's death, I had been adrift, my life lacking both purpose and connection. Now somehow, I've become a guardian again, a role I had thought long behind me. The rest of the day passes in our usual routine. Lunch, a game of chess which Eli wins again, much to my feigned dismay, a brief walk around the property despite the snow, then dinner as darkness falls early, as it always does in a Vermont February. In the evening we sit in the living room, the only light coming from the table lamps and the glow of the wood stove. Eli plays the old upright piano that had gone untouched since Daniel's death. His fingers move confidently over the keys, finding Debussy Tonight, the delicate notes of Clair de Lune filling the room like the moonlight filtering through the windows. I watch him from my chair, this young man who is both familiar and a stranger, who knows me anew each day and yet somehow seems to understand me in ways few ever have. There is an intimacy in our arrangement that transcends ordinary relationships, a daily rebirth of trust, of connection, of care. When he finishes playing, the final notes hanging in the air like a question, he turns to me with an expression I've never seen before, a mixture of confusion and recognition that makes my heart skip. Howard, he says slowly, I remember something. Something that's not in the journal. I set aside my book, trying to keep my voice steady. What is it? The first night I was here, after the hospital released me, he says, his brow furrowed in concentration. You made tomato soup and grilled cheese sandwiches. And you apologized because you said it wasn't much of a homecoming meal, but it was all you could manage on short notice. My breath catches. This was indeed what happened on his first night here, a detail he couldn't possibly know from the journal, which only began the following day. That's right, I confirm, watching him carefully, and I said it was perfect because it was what my grandmother used to make when I was sick. His eyes widen as the memory surfaces. I remember saying that. I remember my grandmother. The significance of this breakthrough isn't lost on either of us. If he can recall that first evening, if he can access memories of his childhood, then perhaps the dam is beginning to break. That's wonderful, Eli, I say, genuine happiness for him, mingling with that complicated dread that Dr. Winters had so accurately perceived. We should note this in your journal right away. He nods, but doesn't move from the piano bench. There's something else. Something about you. I go very still, waiting. You read to me, he says, the words coming more hesitantly now. That first week, when I was still having such terrible headaches. You read. Wordsworth, I think? Something about daffodils? I wandered lonely as a cloud, I supply, amazed that he remembers this. Yes, I read to you when you couldn't sleep. You still do sometimes, he continues, the certainty growing in his voice. When the headaches come back, your voice, it helps. The simple admission touches me deeply. I'm glad, I say softly. He stands from the piano bench, moving to sit in the chair across from mine, leaning forward with an intensity that belies his usual calm demeanor. Howard, what happens if I remember everything? What happens to this? He gestures between us, encompassing our shared space, our fragile routine. It's the question I've been avoiding, now voiced by the person I least expected to ask it. That depends on what you want, I answer carefully. This house has been your sanctuary for 3 months. It can remain so for as long as you need it. But what if I remember a life that takes me away from here? What if I remember responsibilities, relationships, commitments? The possibility hangs between us, as tangible as the firelight casting our shadows on the wall. Then you honor those commitments, I say simply, and you know you always have a place to return to, if you wish. He studies me, those remarkable eyes searching my face as if trying to memorize it, an irony not lost on either of us. You've become important to me, he says finally. I know that sounds strange, since from my perspective, I meet you new each morning. But I feel it. When I wake up confused and frightened, there's still this sense that I'm not alone, that someone cares what happens to me. I do care, I admit, unable to maintain professional distance in the face of such honesty. More than I should, perhaps. Why more than you should? The question is innocent, but it cuts to the heart of what Dr. Winters had been trying to warn me about. Because my role was meant to be temporary, I explain. Because there's an inherent imbalance in our situation. Because you're young, with your life ahead of you, and I trail off, unwilling to complete the thought. Old? He supplies with a small smile. You're not that old, Howard. And besides, age seems like the least relevant factor in this very unusual relationship we found ourselves in. There's a wisdom in his observation that belies his youth. For all the gaps in his memory, Eli possesses an emotional intelligence that often catches me off guard. Perhaps you're right, I concede. In any case, we don't need to solve this tonight. Tomorrow is another day, as they say. His smile fades, replaced by that shadow of anxiety that crosses his face whenever we reference the reset that comes with sleep. Another day where I wake up not knowing you. But you do know me, Eli, I say gently, in ways that matter beyond conscious memory. You trust me each morning, far more quickly than you did in the beginning. You choose the same chair, prefer the same foods, respond to the same music. Some part of you remembers even when your mind tells you otherwise. He considers this, the firelight playing across his features. I suppose that's true. It's just frustrating to know I'll lose tonight. This conversation, these realizations. I'll have to discover them all over again. Then we'll have this conversation again, if needed, I promise. As many times as it takes. And who knows? Maybe tomorrow will bring even more progress. This seems to satisfy him, at least for now. We spend the rest of the evening in comfortable silence, Eli writing in his journal, capturing the day's events and breakthroughs, while I pretend to read but actually watch him, storing away the moment like a photograph to sustain me through whatever comes next. When it's time for his medication, I bring it to him with a glass of water, our evening ritual as established as the morning one. Howard, he says, taking the pills but not swallowing them yet. Can I ask you something personal? Of course. Were you happy? Before the accident, before I came here. After Daniel died. The directness of the question startles me. I was existing, I answer truthfully. I had my routines, my books, my few friends. I wasn't unhappy, exactly. But not happy either. No, I admit, not happy either. He nods, as if confirming something to himself, then swallows the pills. Thank you for being honest. And thank you for everything else. I know I thank you every day, but I mean it every time. I know you do, I say softly. Sleep well, Eli. After he goes upstairs, I remain in the living room, watching the fire die down to embers in the wood stove. The house creaks and settles around me, a familiar symphony of old timber and winter winds. Outside, the snow continues to fall, adding another layer to the blanket that covers the fields and forests of my property. In a few hours, Eli will wake to confusion, and I will begin again the careful process of introduction, explanation, reassurance. But tonight has changed something fundamental between us. His memories are returning, slowly, unpredictably, but undeniably. And with each recovered fragment, the shape of our future becomes both clearer and more uncertain. If he remembers his past, will there be room in it for me? If he doesn't, am I prepared to continue this cycle indefinitely? The questions have no easy answers, but as I bank the fire for the night and prepare for bed, I find myself more at peace than anxious. Whatever tomorrow brings, we will face it together, even if only one of us remembers how we got here. Morning comes with brilliant sunlight that turns the snow-covered landscape into a sea of diamonds. I wake earlier than usual, spending extra time preparing Eli's breakfast, not just oatmeal today, but also scrambled eggs and bacon, a small celebration of yesterday's breakthrough even if he won't remember it. When I hear movement from the guest room, I carry the tray upstairs, preparing myself for the daily reset, the careful reintroduction, the building of trust. But when I enter, Eli is sitting up in bed, looking at me with an expression that stops me in my tracks. "Howard," he says, before I can speak, "you read Wordsworth to me last night. I wandered lonely as a cloud, and then we talked about what happens if my memory comes back." The tray nearly slips from my hands. "You remember?" "Not everything," he cautions, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "But last night, yes, and fragments of yesterday. Dr. Winter's visit. Chess. The Monet book." I set the tray down carefully on the bedside table, my heart racing. "Eli, that's remarkable. That's—" "Progress," he finishes, a tentative smile lighting his face. "Real progress." I sink into the chair beside his bed, overcome with a jumble of emotions, joy for him, pride in his achievement, and yes, that persistent fear of what comes next. "We should call Dr. Winters," I manage, reaching for the practical to anchor myself. "She'll want to adjust your treatment plan." "I already did," he says, surprising me further. "I woke up at dawn, realized I remembered, and called her right away. She's coming this afternoon." "You called her? On your own?" He nods, his smile widening. "I found her number in my journal. I wanted to, I don't know, take some control back. Do something without needing to be guided through it. The independence in this action touches me deeply. For 3 months, Eli has been utterly dependent on me and his journal for the most basic information about his life and daily routine. This small step, making a phone call on his own, represents a significant reclaiming of his autonomy. "I'm proud of you," I say simply. His expression softens. "Howard, there's something else. Something I didn't tell Dr. Winters yet because I wanted to tell you first." "What is it?" "I remember more than just last night," he says, his voice dropping slightly. "I remember fragments from other days, too. Not in order, not complete, but pieces, like a puzzle slowly coming together." My breath catches. "What kinds of fragments?" "Music," he says, his eyes taking on a distant quality. "Playing the piano while you read by the fire. The taste of that venison stew you made when the power went out during the ice storm. The way sunlight hits the kitchen table in the morning." These are not major events, but intimate details of our shared life these past months. The kind of small, ordinary moments that make up a relationship. "And I remember how you looked at me," he continues, his gaze returning to mine. "When you thought I wouldn't notice, when you thought I'd forget." Heat rises to my face. I had been careful, so careful, to maintain appropriate boundaries, to never take advantage of his vulnerability. But I couldn't always control my expressions, the way my eyes followed him as he moved through the rooms of my house, bringing life back into spaces that had been hollow with grief. "Eli," I begin, not sure what to say. "It's okay," he interrupts gently. "I understand. I read my journal from the beginning, all 93 days. I read how patient you've been, how kind, how careful, how you never pushed, never presumed, even when I was at my most dependent." "It would have been wrong," I say quietly. "You couldn't consent to feelings that might have developed under such circumstances." "But what about now?" he asks, leaning forward slightly. "If I'm beginning to remember, if I'm regaining my autonomy, does that change the equation?" The question hangs between us, loaded with possibilities I had not allowed myself to consider. I'm 68 years old, I remind him, echoing what I told Dr. Winters. You're 24. Even without the complications of your condition, that's a number, he interrupts firmly. Just a number. Howard, do you know what I've learned from reading 3 months of journal entries? That I've been falling in love with you every single day, only to forget and start over again the next morning. The confession steals my breath. Eli, it's there in my own handwriting, he continues, gesturing to the journal on the nightstand. Day after day, writing about how safe I feel with you, how your voice calms me, how your hands steady me when the headaches are bad, how watching you read by the fire makes me feel like I've come home, even when I can't remember where home is. I'm speechless, my heart hammering against my ribs with a vigor I haven't felt in years. If you can't remember me, he says softly, reaching for my hand, then I'll love you all over again. That's what I've been doing, I admit, my voice barely above a whisper. Loving you new each morning, knowing you'd forget by nightfall. His fingers tighten around mine. But I'm starting to remember, Howard. And even when I didn't, something in me knew you, recognized you, trusted you. We don't know what will happen, I caution, though I don't pull my hand away. Your memory might fully return, and with it a life that has no place for this. Or it might not, he counters, or it might return and reveal that there's nowhere I'd rather be than here, with you. The only way to find out is to move forward, together, one day at a time. One day at a time. It's how we've been living these past 3 months, each day a reset, a new beginning. Perhaps that approach serves us still, even as the reset becomes less complete. All right, I agree, a tentative hope blooming in my chest. Together, then. Whatever comes next. His smile is radiant, full of a joy I've glimpsed only in fragments before. Together. Outside, the February sun continues to transform the snow-covered landscape, turning what was once barren into something dazzling. Inside, in this small room that has witnessed 94 mornings of confusion and patience, something equally transformative is taking place. The slow, careful birth of a future neither of us could have imagined when fate brought us together on that snowy November night. I don't know if Eli will fully recover his memory. I don't know if whatever brought him to that winding road near my property will eventually reclaim him. I don't know how many more mornings I'll need to reintroduce myself, or how many I'll wait to find recognition in his eyes. But I do know this, if he can't remember me, then I'll love him all over again. And again, and again, for as many days as we're given, and perhaps in that daily recommitment we'll find something more enduring than memory itself.